Okay.
Attention, please.
Yo. 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 Yo.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? It is David Palmer and Rich Lopp here for the Awakening Experience, where today we're going to be doing the Eight of Cups. Super happy to have Rich here. How you doing today, Rich?
Just realized that, we've been going through the pre-shadow here for a few days, and now it makes sense as to why all this stuff has been kind of hard to get through. And I've been laying around feeling like unmotivated and whatnot, and everything has been going wrong today. So it's been one of those days.
I know.
Again, but yeah,
It's been wild, man. I got to say that, just even for us not to be in the studio is already wild enough, but you were telling me on text, like the pre-retrograde shadow tends to screw things up for you. And for me, I had a 2.5 hour computer issue here at home. And of course, we are waiting for a baby any millisecond at the same time. That's now 4 days late. So it's definitely a lot of energy.
yeah, it's got to be wild. I couldn't imagine that, because when my kids were born, they had scheduled C-sections. So like we already knew when we were going to the hospital, what time we were going to show up and all that stuff. I couldn't imagine sitting around waiting on it in anticipation.
No, I know. Trust me, dude. Especially even going to the hospital and everything's looking good. And then they're like, you're not dilated enough. You got to go back home. It's mainly on Sophia. I couldn't imagine for her, having to be late and the baby's got no more room. And it's like you're doing everything that you can, but it's out of your control, which I think actually that energy of Eight of Cups can be used in a lot of different ways that we're going to be covering today. Is like sometimes you just have to walk away from your emotions in just the basic form of the card.
Yeah. With the Eight of Cups, this falls into something that I would always explain to my clients back in the day about, like, if you take a look at it, I've never heard any other reader point this out, but in the last 4 cards of the Suit of Cups, that plays out accidentally manifesting true love. Like if you've ever met anybody who has actually found their person, like everybody I've ever met goes through this process, starting at the 7 of Cups. And the way I look at it is the dude in this card right here has a dark, empty void. He's void of love, and he's looking out at all those cups, or he's thinking about all the cups out there. And he's thinking, which one of those cups out there is going to fill this void in my heart and make my loneliness go away for the rest of my life? Is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? So finally what he does is he drinks every last one of those cups completely fucking dry. Then he says, you know what? I'm tired of that shit. I'm fucking done with that. I'm walking away from love. Every time I drink from one of these cups, it's the same shit. I end up empty and unfulfilled. So I'm done. I'm walking away. And then that's when one day he wakes up and he says, dude, do you know what I realized? I don't need a person to show up in my life and create my happiness for me. You know what? If my person wants to show up one day, that's cool. If not, fuck it. I'm happy either way. So he doesn't realize what he's done here, but he has matched the frequency of true love. That's when the 10th cup will manifest. But it's not until you walk away from like everything that you thought was going to fill that void. It's not until you walk away from that you actually figure out how to fill the void. So that's typically how I look at this, usually.
Yeah, I mean, it's
sense?
a very interesting. Of course, it makes a lot of sense because we do get to a point, especially I love that you brought up the 7 of Cups that's before it. that's where we are at in so much society. You could use it as, oh my God, if I buy this new bed, I will sleep better. And then also at the same time, you know what, if I get that house and I get this, or a relationship, this will fulfill my void that I'm going to feel. When you actually get it, it always is the void itself. You're actually like imagining the void in many ways. And that's why this card is so like, I got to walk away. And, you know, astrologically speaking, there's the new moon that's always up, right? So it's like the closing of a cycle and being like, you know what? I'm sprouting from a new energy source, which you showed in that 9 of Cups is derived from my own fulfilled emotional state. And that's what's hard. You know, we live in a world where so many people have an issue with being able to walk away. And when they walk away, it's the void. You got to learn to walk away from the void. Most people want to walk into the void thinking it's something else. They want to transmutate void into, or actually they want to transmutate something of an ideal or a dream. And it really is, they're transmuting it into a void.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's, I mean, I think the hardest part from what I've learned with all the clients that I've worked with is identifying the void. Like most people can't even really identify the void. They're not even aware that it's there. They're not really aware of what they're trying to do. Like, I think most people are trying to fill that void subconsciously and don't even realize it, you know?
I agree with you because it's one of those things to where it's so subconscious. Emotions, we always look at the mind as the subconscious, but it's always usually, to me, the emotional pull that really likes subconscious energy. We covered the moon card with that. You know, there is that shadow, right? There's that emotional shadow. So when we feel unfulfilled, you know, we want to have some beautiful thing change our life. But that's always what causes us to, it's kind of part of the process, which is unfortunate, but it's the consciousness. That's why I like the 8 of Cups, because it's aware. It's not a card of being unconscious at all or being in that place. Sure, it's a hard card to have to walk away from things that are at one time you thought fulfilled, but it's only 8. That's why I like the 9 of Cups that follows after it. It's like that last piece that was missing was you fulfilled. The whole world could be fulfilled from your own satisfaction, but if you don't have that from just being satisfied from who you are or what you already have already, you know, and there's a wisdom to this card because he is walking up the hill. In many ways, it's like the hermit and how the hermit walks too. So there's the deep wisdom with this card, and I like it because it's a conscious card, not a subconscious or an unconscious card, but it's from all those unconscious and subconscious issues that lead you to this card.
Yeah. I mean, it's knowing when to walk away, I think, is the wisdom in that, you know, because like, especially on a manifestation path, this is where it gets kind of tedious and a little bit slippery is, you know, knowing when to walk away from something, because most of the time, if we're manifesting or trying to manifest something that's unlike anything that we've ever had before, most of the time, whatever we tried to do, it's not quite going to work out exactly the way we tried. So I've seen lots of people, well, you know, like, who was it? Like Einstein or something that said that, you know, insanity is to repeat the same thing over and over and over and expect a different result. And I think that's this energy right here is when you finally realize, like, whatever this is, it's not serving me. It's not working out for me anymore. And it's time to walk away. And that in and of itself, because I've seen so many people driven, motivated, and spinning circles in one spot their whole life, not going anywhere. And all they had to do was walk away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's all you have to do. I mean, and when you look at so many situations that I'm sure you get with people on readings, whether it's a bad love story or a bad work situation, it's always the hardest thing to do is walk away for people. As an astrologer, it's always like, it's amazing how many people like want to hoard emotion. So that's another weird thing is it's like, to me, Hoarders, that old show, it's kind of like, you know, it might not have to be so physical, but it could be the idea in our emotional, you know, construct that we create in the programming too. Like, well, if I leave this guy that's beating the shit out of me, there's always the problems that you start putting in front that are bigger than the problem itself. So that's what I think the weird part about this card is. Walking away is the most highest spiritual thing you can do when things get toxic or things don't get good. You know, it's interesting because this parallels with the Eight of Swords, which we just covered just a couple weeks ago, or was it live? I forgot what week it was, but you know, that's where you do get in the toxic. There's something about those eights where there's a big choice to make, you know, and are you going to stay in that shit or not? And I feel like people have a problem with walking away, yet walking away, whether it's the Matrix, the fucking craziness that we're seeing in the news. So many people in all the chats are talking about Maui right now. It's like, even like walking away to get perspective is another way to look at this card too. You can't get perspective. Like for me not to be at work for the last week at the studios, it's given me so much more perspective at how I do my job and how the network's going. So it's a very hard thing for people to do.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, that's where what I always try to teach is how to develop your own relationship with the universe, because most of the time, you don't even really have to pay that close attention is the thing about it. Most of the time, the universe is trying to push you away. Most of the time. And we just have this thing that we like to do, or we cling and whatever it is, whether it's a relationship or whether or not the universe is trying to pull you away from your workplace for a little bit just to get some perspective. It's always so hard for us to do. And it goes back to what we're always talking about the ego, with trying to figure out how to do everything with the ego. And the ego brain just cannot process everything that the universe is trying to do. But like, if you can pay attention and feel when the universe is trying to pull you away from something, just to be able to step away from it and gain that perspective, most of the time, about 99% of the time, when you like, sometimes you can return back. Maybe this isn't like walk away forever. Like you just said, gain perspective. Maybe you just need to walk away and gain some perspective and then come back with a new outlook, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you completely, because the funny part is the natural part of this card and the heavenly bodies with the sun and the moon. Every month, the sun and the moon, the moon has to walk away from the sun every month. The calendar, if you look at just your life, right? We're going to walk away from August into September. If you're still trying to hold on to August, you're not going to get anywhere. But it's kind of funny. We do back end up in August, just might be a different year in the Gregorian calendar sense. But it's one of those things to where people get stuck. They don't realize like life is about the experience, and especially the awakening experience. But you can't have an experience if you don't continue to grow or to continue to be able to know when to, I'm done with this position. It's overcooked. I've gotten all the life out of it, the memories out of it, the feelings. I can hold on to some of those things with me as guidance and as, reflections to come back to. But there's just some very extreme moments that it feels for people like that is opposite of what they should do. I'm just going to keep fighting to bring life out of this zombie. Well, it's not if he could ever be a human again. It's a zombie. That X is a zombie, or however you want to look at it. Like, there's no cure unless if you want to use a zombie, reference, stay there. Let them bite you and turn into one. Yeah. And I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, because you probably have, like, with what you do in reading astrology, you probably have like a better reference than me, because like you look at everything that's mapped out in the stars and whatnot. But just from what I've seen, I don't think I've ever met anybody in my line of work who is actually due to repeat a past experience. Like that's not in the soul contract. If you're ever put back in with something that you already walked away from, it's because you're fucking it up and you didn't learn whatever lesson you needed to learn. Does that make sense? 100%. We call it in astrology a reoccurrence. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to go through the same experience, but there's going to be those telltale signs. I mean, we call them synchronicities in the New Age community. In astrology, though, a reoccurrence could be, let's say, like the nodes shift every 18 to 19 years in this cycle, right? So then eclipses will come back. And sometimes those could be bringing back up similar situations where it's like, well, at that time in my life, I got in a relationship, although it was bad. Now here we go. 19 years later, I have this opportunity to get back into a relationship, but I've got a new perspective if they've paid attention. There's also usually underlying currents to weird situations, like a reoccurrence could happen in the astrology, and there's so many different types of reoccurrences, of patterns or planets coming into similar spaces or a different planet covering that space to help you understand what the other planet was doing there, maybe a year ago, maybe 10 years ago, it depends. But it's never the same experience, but it's got the silver lining that you have to pay attention to, where it starts to feel like, whoa, I've been here before with the frequency, but I'm not going to buy that frequency. I'm going to, in your way, have you taught, transmute this energy correctly. So I feel like that's when you talked about earlier how we can come back with this card. If you're ever coming back, you got to come in with that perspective of like, I'm not going to just, the second that the zombie drops the panties again, go in for the panties. You don't want that, you know what I mean? Like, you got to have a higher understanding of what you're going back into if you're going to go back in, you know? Transmute it right.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I was wondering. So you've seen, maybe I'm hearing this wrong. You say you've seen where for some reason a couple may part ways and then come back together, and like that's planned out and mapped out that way.
I mean that would be a very unique to those two people's astrology and the reoccurrence. That's possible. I've seen it before, but it's definitely not a blanket one size fits all. I mean, and when we're talking about unique, we're talking about, you know, every single person watching this, including me, you, and every being on this planet. You know, the chances of them having the same astrological alignment as yourself is 0.000000001. Except the person who was born in the hospital next to you, and they would have had to have been born within the same time. That's where twins are probably the closest, right? And they have usually the weirdness of a soul that one side's playing out the more positive or the negative or the yin and the yang. Like, and so they're usually opposites. Like right when the twin is getting married, the other one's single. Or right when the other twins are about to go through a divorce, they're finally going to get married. Like, it's really interesting how those play out. But to answer your question, it's not something that you just tell people like, yeah, you know, everybody's just going to have a reoccurrence one day and everybody's just going to jump back into bed with their ex-zombie.
Yeah. No, I was just clarifying to make sure, because I've never seen it in my career. I've never had, and like you said, every client and whatnot is different and has different energy and whatnot. But I've just never ever witnessed, like, whenever somebody parts ways with somebody, or like, because I have so many clients that come to me asking, you know, is this person that I broke up with 2 years ago, are they my person? And I actually had a client get very pissed off at me about a month ago for telling them, no, that's not your person. If that was your person, the likelihood that you would have walked away from them is slim to none. I mean, that doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to be perfect and whatnot, but 99.999% of the time, when you come together with somebody and you walk away from that, you need to keep walking. You see what I'm saying? So,
because I think they do get pissed off, because I feel that, one, there is that idea in our emotions that they're going to fulfill us when they've already, usually the person's already walking away, the one that we're hoping to come, whether they even came into our life or not. Maybe some people, right, they get the crazy kind of idea in their head because they have a vision about them that they're my twin or they're my soulmate. Yet every time you try to reach out to them, you're seeing their back. So there's a weirdness about abandonment in this card, where some people too could be on the other side of this, where they're not walking away, but somebody walked away from them. And you have to realize, like, they're following their conscious soul path. You have to look at it as a moment of a reflection to you too. Because that's what's interesting, is the perspective of this card is from the one of watching somebody leave. So it's like, we can be on that side too. And I think that that's where it becomes hard, is it's kind of that weird curse, I guess you could say, that happens on people, where it's usually the person who leaves you that you always want back more. But when you leave, then there's, of course, I know you hear the people being like, oh, I made the mistake, I'm coming back, blah, 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 right? You know what I mean? And that's the one that is the incorrect 8 of Cups, right? It's more of like, sometimes people got to leave, like they take a break or they take a separation because you've just not been paying attention to what the fuck's been going on and how you've been carrying the wrong frequency. And to go to where you specialize in, and especially understanding being on the same frequency, especially on that same frequency, tone, and level, you know, it's unfortunate because sometimes in life, and I would say a lot more than just some, the frequencies don't match. And finally, there's somebody who goes, I'm going to that higher frequency in my life. I'm going to up my job. I'm going to up my self-worth. I'm not going to be with you anymore. I just watched a reel the other day saying, and this is where a lot of women are really looking at, they're saying, if you, and it was a very interesting idea that came through this reel, but it was like, if a guy's in his early 20s and he has time to take you on 2 to 3 dates a week, he's not the guy for you, because that means he's not building his frequency. I'm using our term, but a spiritual term, but like, he's not doing anything. He has enough time just to like waste his time in his life right now, just like focused so much on you that he's not able to get anywhere and up his game or go anywhere. I was like, damn. So that's why you're seeing a lot more, you know, women going for guys that are 10 years older, because they've done the work and they've got the ability to do something in their life. So I feel like, you know, I feel like people could be feeling abandoned. I think all of us guys, when we were going through high school, and the hot girl, she always did that, right? It was like, boom, the second she was a senior, the college dudes were dating her, the dudes that had a job or whatever. And, you know, you're watching this kind of leaving energy they're going to their vibration. And this is where jealousy, this card, nobody really talks about it, but there could be a jealousy of watching somebody walk to a higher position and you feeling unfulfilled, just as much as you walking away from something that you're unfulfilled from. But really, it's not that you're unfulfilled. You realized you're fulfilling your own self now, instead of these things that we attach to emotionally.
Yeah, it creates what I like to refer to as, I wish I could think of a better term for it, but I call it push-pull. And you see it happen energetically all the time. And it's once you figure out how to take control of it, manifestation becomes really fun. But in dealing with people, especially in relationships, you can actually sit and watch this happen in real time. And it's push-pull. So, like, have you ever like stopped and asked yourself, why is it that every time I'm really, really into somebody, they're not that into me? And the only people who are really, really into me are the people I'm not into, you know? And I have clients that come to me from time to time, and they'll actually say that every time I want to be with them, they don't want to be with me. And then whenever they want to be with me, I don't want to be with them. It's like, that's push-pull. Push-pull. And because you can feel on an energetic level when something is out of reach. And I think we all kind of have that thing deep, deep down inside where we always want what we can't have. And that's something that you feel on an energetic level. And that's where what you were just talking about a minute ago, that jealousy and that feeling and seeing somebody else moving up to a higher position. And you can feel that energetic separation happening at a deep, deep level, you know? So, yeah. I mean,
well, yeah, I was, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's where you get that frequency issue where then it becomes the person who's watching somebody move into a higher frequency, thinking that they can do it by still trying to attach to you, as if that frequency is going to shift. Like, you have to now if you're the person raising your frequency, like that you have some sort of magical power that the other person can change. So people always do that. They walk out the door, they're finally moved on. There's that last moment where like, please, and then I'm going to turn around now and not go towards that new moon and go towards that real 9 of Cups fulfillment to actually get to a 10 of Cups in my life. I'm going to turn back around, and I think now I can transmute them for them. And then that creates the worst situations that become, to be honest with you. So this is a card where it's like when you put your foot on the path towards a higher frequency, you have to stay on it. To get to the best, the best 2 cards back to back, really, in the minor arcana are that 9 of Cups to 10 of Cups. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my clients all the time that the actual goal is 9 of Cups. That's the goal, because when it comes to anything in life that we want, whether it's a relationship with your life partner or even a bunch of money, it doesn't matter. It's not the actual thing that we want. The goal, what we really want, is the feeling that we think the thing is going to bring us. But the thing won't bring the feeling. As it here in the tarot, 9 of Cups comes first. This is the goal. This is the feeling. And the 10 of Cups comes afterwards. I don't think that was done accidentally. I don't think so. It's just, if that was an accident, the lady that did this artwork and whatnot, that was a glorious accident, because I mean that whole process is the process of accidentally manifesting true love, walking away saying, fuck it, I'm done with that shit, I'm happy, I'm fulfilled. And then that's when the 10 of Cups comes in. Everybody I have ever met who was with their actual person went through that process.
Yeah, and that's what's hard, because that process always comes with, I had to leave a frequency if we restructure it, and I think help deprogram the idea of like, I had to go through this horrible situation. It's like what you went through is you let go of staying on a frequency that wasn't adjusting properly and raising the band of the frequency to a higher range in your life, right? So there's a higher frequency that we can always be reaching. The interesting part of a new moon is it doesn't mean that a new moon means that you just wipe your whole entire life away and start over. But it does have you reflect on the last month when we're at the dark phase of the moon, which is the 2.5 days prior to the new moon, where the moon is dark. You can only see it at right before sunrise. So it's at dusk, like right before the dawn, and it looks bloody. And that's also why in the menstrual cycle, right? If the egg doesn't fertilize, then a woman goes through her period, right, for 2.5 days. So this is connected with the menstrual cycle of the understanding of the seeding of a new egg that happens on a new moon, the same way that a new egg becomes fertilized. It's not fertilized. A new egg comes about to go through its journey. And we have to remember that we don't just, in our life, we just don't throw everything away. But there are things in our life where it's like, you know what? Maybe you picked up an emotional 7 of Cups kind of thing that you were going for, like you wanted to hang out with these cool people, and you realize they weren't cool. And finally you're realizing, you know what, that's not my frequency. It's okay to, you know what, I'm starting this cycle without that in my life. Let me see what it's like with, and let me see what it's like without. And then let me maybe come back and see if I liked it better with or without. Sometimes I think some people look at this card as like, uh-oh, it's all over. I have to leave everything. But I think it's a good card about being aware of all these situations, especially there's 8 cups. So there's usually a lot of things to be reviewing. Now, whether that's all clumped up together, that's a big thing to really, kind of look at. This isn't the card of like, take out the fucking samurai sword and just chop the head off of your life. But sometimes we do go through that, and this card can represent that. But I think more on a day-to-day basis, month-to-month basis, it's definitely, there's always something that is connected to that 7 of Cups that I think I'll be better if I do this, or some girl thinking that if she watches Britney Spears on Instagram with a fake face on, if I'm more like that, I'll be more liked. When really, we're all watching it going, who is really behind the AI mask. You know what I mean? Some people can get caught up, and we all do. We all get caught up emotionally in what we desire more, or what we think is going to be the ultimate. That Seven of Cups, that hollowness, that darkness that's there, trying to yearn for something to bring it in without realizing its own light is from within. That's a hard thing for people to walk away from. It's really, you're walking away from your worst self. And people forget that no matter what it's connected to, it's not self. If you were to use the human design way to look at it, when we're in our not self, we're not in our conscious self, we're just running in a primal state of environmental aspects that are programming us, that really it's letting the programmed frequency run us. And when we finally say goodbye to that, so that's why I call this another card of when we actually walk away from the matrix too, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of like the way you was saying that a minute ago, and because this goes back to what I was talking about a couple of weeks ago, where most people I think disagree with me, but when I was saying I don't want to be with a woman that's inexperienced, you know, this is experience, because once you've drank from all 7 of those cups, you already know what's out there. You know what you're walking away from. See, if there's anybody who's never gone through a 7 of cups and then 8 of cups, and then they just jump straight to that 10 of cups, they're going to be wondering, you know what? They're going to go through that 7 of cups moment eventually. What else is out there? What else is out there? And I know it's like a really controversial topic, at least in the manosphere and the red pill community and whatnot, about how real men want a virgin. It's like, I don't. I don't. I want somebody that's had the 7 cups and they know all the cups that are out there, so that when they pick me, they're like, she's like, you know what? I'm good here. I know what's out there. Does that make sense?
100%. I really feel that that's the problem, is you get people, and it doesn't matter by age either. There's people who, like you and I, you just take us in our early 20s, we tasted all 7 cups, where then there's some people, they get to 50 and they only tasted 1 cup, and then you just see them have a midlife crisis, their Chiron return. Like, I never have experienced anything. I need to go find out what it's like to see what it's like to make out with a guy at a bar. I've never done that before. I've never found who I was. Maybe I need to be an entrepreneur. I never tried that before. So some of these things don't have to be relationship based, but it is interesting that this card to me does have a lot more significance, because the 10 of Cups ahead deals with partnership and family. The 9 of Cups deals with that independent self. It's funny how maybe you've experienced one of those 7 cups, like in business, but you haven't experienced it in these other areas. It's one of those things to where the more well-rounded you are, the 9 of Cups shows us. It's that you've been able to independently understand your frequency. And I'm not going to say in everything, but as so much so to where you're satisfied enough that you're willing to go through commitments to frequency to manifest major dreams. And that's where I think a lot of people lack is, well, I don't like this job, so I'm going to switch to the next level, but it's really still not satisfying me. It's staying on the same cup. It's staying on that same idea that maybe the corporate ladder through KFC will get me to McDonald's or something like that. If you don't want to work in fast food, nothing against working in fast food, but you know, if you don't want to work in fast food, maybe it's time for you to walk away from fast food and take that big leap, because he's walking slow, so it feels like it's a leap, but really it's just like that gradual disconnection. And it's very Aquarian to me, and you're an Aquarius, so you would know, like, when it's just emotionally taxing, or we feel void, emotionally depressed or empty, disconnecting is your only way out. You don't have to keep drowning. That's another way to look at it. This is a card where it's like, I'm finally going to get out of this drowning pool I'm in emotionally. Or you know, when we talk about energy vampires, you know, a 7 of Cups could be that person that is on your 16 item list of everybody that you want to be in a person. They've got it all. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are it.
Yeah. I mean, you brought up a good point though, because what really put my name out there and got my career started was when I started making videos about Aquarius, because I used to get so pissed off if you would type in Aquarius into Google and everybody talking so much shit. You know, Aquarians are unemotional and this and that. And like, I started making videos like, nah, anybody with a strong, heavy Aquarius influence, the fact of the matter is, those people probably feel emotions deeper than anything you could imagine. And like you said, drowning in it. That's one of the main reasons why Aquarians disconnect from their emotions like that. And because, yeah, you can easily drown in it. And like, that's some of the most sensitive energy, I think, out there. And yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out, because that is pretty Aquarian to be able to disconnect from it. Because, you know, if you're drowning in that shit, I don't know. There's something at some point in time, whatever it is that you're going through, you have to get to the point to where you say, you know what? The pain of walking away has to be less than the pain of staying in the same spot. Like a silly example, but when I started going to the gym, I told myself the pain of working out is not nearly as bad as the pain of being embarrassed to be in my own skin. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
It's
and
so
that's
easy
what's,
to drown in.
yeah. And I think that's where Aquarius, it's not that it's not emotional. It knows when to detach emotionally, because it's gonna, number one, not give you the aspect to move forward. The idea of Aquarius is always wanting to move forward and advance and to reach to higher frequencies. Literally, Aquarius rules frequencies. That's why you're so good at it. It's when it feels and it senses the understanding, like, especially if it's the water bear, it has to keep pouring water to help the next person. You just don't go, well, the person behind that just got the water wants more. Well, if you look at the picture, well, there's 700 people in front of you right now. I got to make sure that this water goes all 700 people. So the whiny, cranky little bitch that just got water that wants more, Aquarius goes, sorry, I got to go to the next person in front of you that didn't get any yet. And so, you know, that's where that understanding comes from, is it's not that Aquarians aren't emotional. It's that they choose very, very wisely a frequency match in anything they do, very wisely, because they don't want to have to live in a world where they have to disconnect. That's not what they really want to do. They want to advance constantly. But if it's energy that gets stagnant, or energy where, you know, we could think of a frequency being stagnant, kind of like a tired song playing on a tired radio. Not going to get too Goo Goo Dolls on people. But, you know, that's one way to look at it. But another way is where the breaker just keeps popping, right? And it's like fucking in the middle of the night, boom, the lights go out. You're fucking in the garage now, and you're fucking having to find it. There's a black widow in there, and you're like, oh, God. That's a sign from the universe. You know what I mean? Like, that frequency you're connecting to, the breaker's popping. There's a disconnection already happening. Are you going to match the frequency of the disconnection by disconnecting from the situation? That's an interesting way to look at it too, is that the universe is very clear when to disconnect, because it's already disconnected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I being able to identify patterns too is another big thing. Like, I mean, I know me and most of the other people that I've met in my life all share one thing in common, and that's the ability to identify a pattern. Because I'm the type of person that back in the day, when I was younger, in my early 20s, I repeated toxic cycles so many times that now some people think that I'm being judgmental whenever I see something and I'm like, I already know what's going to happen. I already know what's going to happen. Not doing it. I'm done. I'm walking away. You know, especially when it comes to like a relationship or a friendship or something like that. You know, somebody does something once. Okay. They do it twice. They're going to do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And whenever you get to identifying those patterns and you know when to walk away, that's when you're really going to start climbing mountains and seeing change in your life, you know?
Yes, and I'm going to bring up one more Aquarius thing. It's a water bear, but that doesn't mean it's a water sign. It's an air sign. Because if you get stuck in the water, you can't intellectualize and understand. You can't let's be honest, electricity and water don't really go well together. Okay, you can get shocked and die putting your fucking blow dryer into the fucking, oh, I'm just, trying to take a Snapchat video and be on TikTok and be cool and do my hair in the fucking bathtub. You know what I mean? Like, it's about letting go of getting stuck. Emotions can pull us in the darkest places, and of course they can pull us in the most beautiful places. But that is why the moon rules Cancer. And unfortunately, there's a weirdness where we still on this planet today don't understand our fucking moon. Why does it only face us? We don't get to see the other side, the dark side of the moon. There's a shadow to the emotional world where we can let go of the understanding of our consciousness, our frequency matches, understanding when it's time for renewal in our life, and getting emotionally hoarding. And you see this in Cancers a lot. They will stay with somebody even, and it was probably a Cancer who wrote the wedding vows that the Catholic Church put out there to people, because through thick and thin and so forth, which of course, we all strive to be that in life, but they don't mention if they're fucking cheating on you, and then they end up getting an STD. Are you going to sit there and nurse them for their fucking HIV? Isn't there a nurse for that?
Yeah, there has to be some point where you can draw a line, Like there are some things that to me are just like deal breakers, but like I think more importantly, like I was talking about cycles a minute ago, like the idea when two people come together is that whenever we encounter an obstacle, we grow from it and learn together. And, if it doesn't become toxic until that energy keeps repeating itself and repeating itself. Like to a degree, like you and your person have an argument. That situation or that argument in and of itself isn't toxic. It's an opportunity for the two of you to grow and learn and overcome that obstacle. But like you were saying, Cancers and water signs and whatnot, one thing that I see them doing a lot of is looping around in that same toxic cycle over and over and over. And that same energy is just ever present. They're just bathing in that same energy, the same argument, the same toxicity all day, every day. And at some point it's like, so what are you going to do? Are you just going to keep bathing in that energy? Are you just going to sit in that knowing? How many times does this have to keep happening before you draw a line in the sand and say, I'm not doing this anymore? I'm like on a merry-go-round. I'm just looping around in the same circle over and over and over again. At what point do you draw the line and say, I'm done playing this game? It's time to walk away,
Well, there was a high viber that just said, till STD do we part. So that's a good way of drawing that line in a funny way. But I think you're right, because it's like, one, the Eight of Swords, what's underneath her as she's blind and surrounded by swords, which rule intellect and our understanding and our mental capacity to understand frequency, is toxic waste, which has water in it. So it's weird that the Eight of Cups is walking away. We don't know what's in those cups. That's the irony, right? Like it might look like, well, he's actually walking towards fresh water, but this could be RV black sewer water in here. That Seven of Cups, you wanted the idea of to go do meth in a trailer park and have a thrill that was going to fulfill you so you could be feeling like you're in the movie Spun, one of my favorite movies.
I love that movie.
I know, it's fucking too good of a movie. But, at the same time, I'm not going to, it's like you get to a point where it's like, gosh, like, okay, it's time to go disconnect from this. So when you think of alchemy and understanding even the basics of it, it's earth, water, air, and then fire. So in order to get to the fire, which really is just our ether, our spiritual soul self, it's only through that air that finally is that cross section of understanding frequency to get to ourself. That's why the Nine of Cups to me is after this eight, that is like this understanding of I have to move out of this emotional, physical reality. So when we talk about manifestation, a lot of people get stuck in that mud where they've mixed their emotions too much in with the physical, right? They've mixed their emotions in with the fucking relationship that's not good, but because that has a house and maybe they're fucking, I don't know, maybe they're a dude and they're dating some older chick to get money, right? So they're putting their emotions mixed on not so much the relationship anymore, but then the money that's paying for the house, and they're unhappy, but they don't want to have to go get a job, or they don't want to have to move their frequency up to reach to the true self that they are. So they're living in their most false self, not just the not self, but the false self. So it's interesting that it's very clear that these eights always sense. Even the Eight of Wands is about movement, right? Or if we even think about the Eight of Pentacles, that's another. If you look at them, they're all about changing the situation to a better frequency. And this one's the emotional one that we can get super mixed into these false manifestation intentions, especially because new moons are about intentions. And so we can always approach our intentions differently. I know it can be hard though, but some people have that problem where they think while they're in the middle of the fucking cage, I can intentionally, hopefully, get out of this situation without realizing, well, you're going to have to own up to something. So you're going to have to own up and say, I was guilty. Let me do the 15 days in jail, or I have to, you have to at least own the energy. By then, the walking away is owning the energy. I'm owning that it wasn't good. I'm owning that I mixed the pot too much with this shit. And also, alchemy is the idea of turning lead into gold. I took this lead, it didn't turn into gold. I took this frequency, I thought it was going to be super high. It wasn't.
Yeah, sometimes too. Well, I mean, and this energy that what we're talking about is just general everyday life. Like whenever something is no longer serving you and it's time to move on from it. But like, especially if you're on a manifestation path and you're walking that path, sometimes you're just going to have to know when it's time to do this. The perfect example is us moving here from Vegas. That was one of these moments, and there was nothing going wrong. There was no problem. There was nothing that was toxic or anything like that. It's just, I'm on a manifestation path. That's my life. That's my lifestyle. So it got to that point where the universe was whispering in my ear, it's time to move on. It's time to let go of that car. It's time to walk away from your car. And that's when I think your real true test of your relationship with the universe will really come in. The further down that manifestation path you make it, that's when it gets hard.
Right. Well, and I think that's what's hard is because it's like carrying a huge trailer full of shit and wanting to go up the hill. Yet you don't have enough energy in your soul to propel that forward because you're attached. And so it's like people try to do two things at the same time. They want to hold an old frequency and go into a new frequency. And that unfortunately doesn't work, especially using the radio example or the one of you moving. Like you moved and we came up with this idea of taking your old show and doing it. And you just hit 1 million views on one of your reels from our show last week on Facebook. That wouldn't have happened if you would have stayed in the same place doing the same thing. So, it's hard. It's hard in our lives to go, I want to stay in this old frequency and the new one at the same time. You can't be at two places at once until you get to quantum computing and you're part of the quantum computer and we get to new quantum timelines and understanding how quantum really works. But and that's what we're all edging to get to eventually. But, even for us to get there, we're going to have to leave the timeline that doesn't align timeline-wise, too.
Yeah, there's going to be lots of new quantum things coming, but before those things come, we're going to have to walk away from the old system, aren't we? And that shit scares the hell out of me. Do you know anything about it?
I think that's what's. I mean, first I want to say that I think with this card comes that fear, like something's going to show up that's not the way that we want it to look, which is always a 7 of Cups situation, right? So we might the ideal of, well, the way the system works right now, it offers these things that I see that I really want, but we don't know until if we were to get there that maybe it would be empty. Maybe a new system coming in would present actual things that are in true alignment with who we are and how we want to do it, which would be more satisfying and actually be more 9 of Cups into 10 of Cups. So it's like sometimes what looks like the fantasy, like I remember those watching MTV growing up, and it was like fucking every other commercial when it came on was like, want to be a dentist, nurse, trainer, you know, a dentist assistant, come to this dentist college. Right? Like it was just like nonstop. So then people started to get the idea of like, well, once I become that, then I can have my own apartment, and then I could get out of my parents' house, and then I could do this. And then it just like, that's as far as they get. So like the eight of Cups to me is like, I can go way farther. I can see this new moon. I can see a true soul intention where I'm also, like any manifestation tactic, I'm also intentionalizing it, but I'm going to emotionally let it go of the outcome so it can actually happen. Where I feel like we become too attached, and then it's never going to happen because we become too attached emotionally that we forget the flow of the universe to actually work. So we're not in flow, period.
Mm-hmm. And you remember what we were talking about a few weeks ago, like where all these people are like advertising being an online entrepreneur, and it shows them sitting on the beach with their cocktail and their laptop, and it's like, become self-employed and this here is your life. And it's like, yes, I want to just sit on the beach with my laptop drinking a margarita, and that's what's going to fulfill me, you know. And then you get there and you're like, okay, well, this is cool for like an hour. Now what? You know,
it's true though. And that's the problem, is the idea too. We see it really, I think, happening, whether it's TV, social media, our environment, our families, our friends, where we go to school, all these environmental aspects of like, how is it supposed to be done? How is life supposed to look? And I think the problem becomes with that is that you forget about like being yourself first and manifesting from the frequency of who you are. I feel like the 7 of Cups is the diversion of, you know, one time, you know, people thought Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all that were like the hottest thing since sliced bread. Yet, you know, it's one of those things to where it's not like every guy wanted to become a Backstreet Boy. And it's not like every girl wanted to end up with a beta male like that. You know, so I feel like that there's a diversion that we all go for, right? It looks better. Like, I want to go try that out. I want to go try this weird reality out, whatever it might be. And then it becomes one of those things to where it's like, maybe that's not who I actually am. I think this card actually gets to the bottom of, I'm finally getting back to who I am again because I lost myself in that shit. And how did I lose myself into that shit? And having the awareness of it too.
Yeah. Well, even at that, at least it represents an energy of, I'm leaving what I am not. You know, like I always tell people that you have to get to the point where you're so sick and tired of being where you are that I'm leaving. I don't care. I don't care where I'm going, but I'm leaving. I'm not going back there. I don't know where this new path is going to lead me. I have no idea. But I'm getting away from this. This is not me anymore. And 100% of the time, every time I've seen somebody turn and walk away from what they are not, they always end up finding this energy. Always. It's like guaranteed. It happens with whether you try to make it happen or not. As soon as you walk away from what's not serving you, usually it's like friends and family. Typically, for the most part, most people are so clung to like their friends and their family. But every time, at least me with clients, the feedback that I've received where I've given people the courage and the nudge. No, you are not required to let somebody treat you like shit just because you all share the same blood. And they walk away. You know how many testimonials I've received in my inboxes of people who have completely transformed their life, manifested their wildest dreams just from walking away from what no longer serves them, you know?
I know. And you know, things look good, but it's like, and I get it. Like, man, especially when you're not in your awakening experience yet, that's kind of what gets us to it, is realizing how much stuff is fake. I mean, the best way it's to be put is like yesterday, one of my good friends, astrologer Robert Phoenix, did his show, and he was saying, like, if you at this point have not gotten one reel about what's really happening in Maui right now with the people, that's not what the media is showing, but what the people are showing and what they're saying is happening on the ground. What universe are you really in, right? And so it kind of is one of those things to where when we look at this fucking reality now, there's a lot of people who, to them now, I think we're at a place to where people are looking at the world construct that has been created through our schools and our programming and our media as that there is some sort of treasure in that, right? And they can't let that go. So ABC's coverage of showing a guy who did his hair perfectly, who's obviously staying in a nice hotel, surrounded by people who've just lost their family members, their friends, their homes, their cars, and also with no warning, and something fucking not natural happened, period. And doing it with like a concern, but also a smile as he's trying to hit on the girl on the other side of the fucking network. There's something to where people are looking at that guy as that's how I want to take my information. That feels good. That's how I want to be like that person. Where, what do you really feel inside? You know, and I think people, if they look at it from that area for a second, then look at their relationship, like this is where the Eight of Cups to me is that moment, especially where it's like, especially when I see it reversed, right? It's like every excuse of why you can't leave, why you can't leave the false lying system, why you can't leave that relationship that's beyond just horrible or toxic because it's not you. That's the main thing. Is it doesn't matter what the situation is, whether it's a job, a project, an addiction, all these things. The most toxic part of it is not the thing, it's that you are not being you in it, you know?
Yeah and I don't know, like one question that I used to get all the time back in the day was, I've been on and off with this person for X amount of time. They keep coming back. When are they going to change? And I, like, several people have asked me this question, and I always tell them the same thing. It's like, well, the fact that they keep coming back proves that they haven't changed, but the fact that you keep letting them come back proves that you haven't changed. And that's what like when I see it reversed, usually in my line of work, when it comes reversed, that's usually what it is somebody making their way back, somebody coming back around. And at the end of the day, like with what I do for a living, when it comes to this Eight of Cups moment, you have to make the conscious decision to walk away. If I just simply tell you, you need to get away from this person, they're toxic as fuck, this relationship or this friendship or whatever isn't going anywhere, and you just take my word for it and say, oh, well, I trust Rich. He sounds like a good dude that knows what he's talking about, so I'm just going to take his word for it. And you go ahead and walk away, but you don't really see why you should. Like you can't look at this situation for yourself and say, nah, fuck that. I deserve better than that. I'm not putting myself through that bullshit anymore. You just walk away because I told you to and you trust me. You're going to end up going through that again and again and again until you learn the lesson, until you make the conscious decision to turn and walk away, you know?
Yeah, and I think, again, the way that he's walking, it's not like it's a straight, paved, perfect road. It's natural, uneven terrain walking up. So it's going to feel a little bit like a workout, right? Like I don't know if I want to do this right now. I don't want to sweat, or I don't want to, you know, like I've been walking with Sophia every day. We do 3 miles because, you know, she's in pre-labor and she's past her due date. So, but we were doing that prior, right? So we do the 3 miles a day and we push each other to do it, and it's fun, and we get to talk. We don't take our phones with us, and we're able to really, you know, be in things. But it's one of those things to where, believe it or not, the neurons in our brain that fire off on uneven terrain is natural and helps us with our cognitive skills and so forth. It's the paved path, the flat path that is not natural on this planet, that doesn't start firing off. So people who run on the same flat surface all the time, that's why if you go to retreat centers or you go up into the Himalayas, they're going to have you walk barefoot on the rock or on these weird things to fire your brain neurons and fire these things off in a different way for you to fire up your senses and understanding. So people, I think, get scared because it feels like it's uphill walking away, and it feels like it's it's not perfect green, perfectly green grass, like flowers, fucking, path, what it looks like. It doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like the entrance to Disneyland where Mickey Mouse is like, hey, how are you? It's more like there's nobody on the other side. And that's the worst. You can leave an energy and then be like some of these fucking motherfuckers out there, be like, I'm only leaving once I have somebody to pull me on the other side. Well, that's the problem. Yeah, that's like, geez, how many readings do you have to do to fix that one when you go, the problem was when you left the last person because you jumped into the bed of somebody else right away. Like, it wasn't like you didn't even have that time to process who you are. That's why this card, he's walking alone. What's with him, though? The sun and the moon, the reflection of his emotional and conscious embodiment and how it has to come together. The soul and the emotional embodiment and the whole understanding of self has to come together to move forward. And it's not perfect. It's not a path that looks like a normal path. It looks basically a terrain that's unknown, right? It's like going on a hike you've never been on the trail with before. That's a good sign.
Yeah, yes, I do run into that a lot in my line of work. And what's happening there is whenever somebody has to jump straight from one person to another, they're not making a frequency change. And the clients come to me all the time and they ask me, why am I constantly repeating the same cycle over and over and over? And it's because, like I tell everybody, the primary is the law of vibration. The secondary law is the law of attraction. And this means you only attract according to the frequency that you vibrate at. So if you are going through a failed relationship, that means that you're on a frequency that resonates with failed relationship. So if you're on a frequency that resonates with failed relationship, and a failed relationship is what's manifesting in your life, and you jump into another relationship while you're still on the frequency of failed relationship is going to manifest again and again and again and again. And people get stuck in that trap. What they're doing, kind of like the radio, how I always use the radio analogy, they're not changing stations. If your radio is tuned to 107.7 top country hits and you can't stand country music, if you just sit and let the music keep playing and keep playing and keep playing, country music's the only thing that's going to come through that motherfucker,
Same thing happens, and I love that you brought this up because we see that in individual to like the individual relationships especially, but I think there's also that element where you could be in a group of friends or you could be on a team. Let's say the team mindset is, yeah, we lost another one, but you know what? We're giving our best, and you know what? We're focused on tomorrow being a better day. It's like, and that becomes the same repetitive pattern constantly? Or, yeah, our friend group's toxic. One of us is always fucking carrying one of our fucking bitches home, fucking in the backseat of the car, throwing up every fucking weekend. And I'm not liking this. I'd rather be around a bunch of friends where we could be empowered, go to some spiritual retreats, start creating some awesome manifestations together. But you're just creating throw up coming out of that fucking same bitch every fucking weekend in the backseat of an Uber with some fucking guy who's trying to chase her down and take her into the fucking your apartment when you're always like, no, this bitch, same thing happens every fucking time. Or I'm always on the team that loses. Is it you? Yeah, it's you choosing to be on the team that loses. At some point, you have to realize, like, the mentality of the team. You can't also try and save the team by being the only one that's going to carry the same frequency, right? Like, oh, I'm the best one on the team, but everybody sucks. It's like, well, do they suck, or are you choosing to align with the same energy that is putting you to make you feel good because you feel maybe better that you're better, but they suck? That's not a winning team. So there's interesting elements to where I think people can get lost just only in the individual complex, where it's like, where is your environment? What's your group? You brought up the family thing, right? Because there's a lot of programming on that one, right? It's like, oh my gosh, if I dare do anything against my own self in the family, well, I guess I'm now going to be the heretic, and I'm going to be the one that everybody castrates, and I'm going to hear it forever. You also are manifesting that too, because at some point you do have to set a precedent, and you do have to be, cordial and fair, and at least make people aware of where you feel and have conversations. Sometimes, and I feel like with this card, though, this isn't the card of making diplomacy happen and making your diplomatic aspects of trying to work with the team, trying to work with your girlfriends or your dudes that fucking constantly throw up and constantly are getting chased by some gross person that's trying to walk in your apartment while they're fucking passed out throwing up and you want a different life. Those conversations have already happened. This is where you're finally like, I'm done. And I'm moving into a different energy now, which is not even different. I'm moving back into myself, which that's a hard thing for people to do.
Yeah, well, on the other side of that coin too, this is another thing that I try to teach is let's look at the other side of the coin, because there's been people I've seen people say, "Oh, Rich Lopp says that I have to cut my friends and family out of my life." No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. Don't walk away from anybody. You just stay right where you're at. If you focus on raising your vibration, just put up an energetic wall around you and focus on nothing but your vibration. And you're able to raise your frequency and hold your frequency. This will happen by way of universal law. Everybody who no longer matches the new frequency you're raising to will walk away from you. It will happen by default. This is not Rich Lopp's opinion. This is not David Palmer's opinion. This is an immutable universal law. Whenever you move to a new frequency, anything that does not match your new vibration has to be pulled away from you. It just so happens that it's very difficult to raise your vibration while you're surrounded with other people in situations that don't match the vibration you're raising to. It's hard to do that. It's much easier to walk away first and then raise frequencies later. But okay, like I tell people, don't walk away. Stay right where you're at, and you focus all of your energy on raising your vibration and watch those people walk away from you. Promise you that.
Well, I love that you bring up that it's an immutable spiritual divine law, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So it reminds me of the story of the three little pigs. It's like you're going to sit there and keep having a straw house, and every time the big bad wolf's going to come by and blow your house down, you're like, no, I'm not going to move on, and I'm not going to try and build a better frequency, which would be at least a wood house, but we already know what happens to that one. So it's like, I need to build a brick house. But people just sit there and want to be that little pig and just keep having the big bad wolf come by and blow it down. That's why when you're Uranus energy or Aquarius energy, it's not just only detachment. It's when things that you, in a weird way, it's not what you could expect fully, because it happens not in the way that you think, right? You think like, well, if I keep staying here and I keep doing this, it'll change. Oh no, it'll change just in the way that you didn't want it to, because Uranus is a disruptor, right? So what happens is sometimes this card comes because you just got disrupted to where it's like, I have no other choice now but to leave. because whatever the situation wasn't in alignment for my highest good. It wasn't in myself, and it wasn't advancing me to a higher spiritual level. So, you know, a lot of situations happen to where it's like I'm sitting there watching the fucking gate fall down, and on the other side is coyotes every night. Well, eventually, until you do something about it, this card could also just be like, you know what, I'm finally going to do something about the situation that's just falling apart in front of my face, and I'm choosing to just sit and watch it. So there's a laziness. To me, it's spiritual laziness. When we don't evolve, we all fuck up. I'm one to say, like, the way that I used to put out situations in multiple times in my life, or things that I've said, or my attitude about things. These are all parts of it that are usually parts of things when we get out of alignment. And so this is the card to get ourselves back to ourself. So it's an alignment card, and it's very Uranian to me. Sometimes, finally, as you already knew, there was something weird going with that partner. This could be the Eight of Cups, where it's like, I have no choice now but to leave because I came in and they're having a fucking orgy, and she's, you know, got 4 dudes in her right now. But there's some people, like if you ever watch that movie Boogie Nights, where the camera guy's fucking wife just does that all the time, and he finally blows his head off because he can't deal with it. And it reminds me of people who sit and they can't let go, even when the universe, the partner, the universe is everything though. So the partner, the job, the situation, whatever is not in alignment with your true self that's trying to raise you to a better place, it's going to come through. And this is a card to where also, I'll use one more example, the Wizard of Oz. Like, you know, it's like the house finally came out and flew out, you know, and just dropped you off in Oz. You've got to walk away because that situation finally happened. If you could feel like out of nowhere situations finally come, and then the worst though is to be in that place. The worst though is to wait for that unpredictable, horrible situation to where it's like, I guess I have nowhere left to go but this. And that's why that cane might represent that kind of wounded, kind of like, and I've been bandaged or damaged in some sort of way. But, you know, it's not so much about the damage that has been done. It's more about the damage you do to yourself, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I very much relate because I can remember what it was like, you know, feeling like I have nowhere else to go. It's that unknown that we're all so afraid of. And I mean, I would be lying if I said that I'm not afraid of the unknown. I'm still scared to death of the unknown, you know? And that's what keeps people sitting in one spot. Like, walk away from this and then what? Walk away from this failed relationship and then what? They so desperately want their situation to change, and they have no desire to live in this life without that relationship. So yeah, I've known some people to take themselves out because their situation won't change. And I mean, I did the same thing back in the day. My situation wasn't changing. I didn't know what to do. I tried to leave early. Spirit wouldn't let me. So I can relate.
Talk about I was going to say, talk about an Eight of Cups experience of trying to leave, and then that's the disruption, is you walking back to your true self. But that's the gnarly way that's probably the most extreme there is, right? Of like, oh, I'm going to try it. And that's what's weird is sometimes too, let's throw a curveball here. Let's say I'm going to walk away from my spiritual self and I'm going to go back to the Matrix. Right? So like, I'm walking away from the spiritual stuff because I think this is really what I am. We see people do this all the time, and then boom, they end up realizing that they walk back to the true self of who they really were, that they left behind. It usually goes pretty bad, you know, like when I'm going to follow the fucking program, you know, and most of the time the situation like you went through was you were trying to leave the program but didn't have the tools, and that's why you teach people the tools now, how to understand how to not get caught in the program and how to transmute their energy so where they don't have to go through what you went through.
Yeah, it does seem though like the majority of us in the spiritual community all have that in common. You know, at some point in time, we didn't get on a spiritual path because life was going good. You know, but I mean, back in the day, I don't know. I am still I still rack my brain every single day trying to figure out some way of connecting with people who are at that place that I was at. And honestly, I'm not going to lie, that is tricky. That's a tough one. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know. I've gotten several testimonials. I've gotten at least 5 testimonials of people telling me that some advice that I gave saved them from suicide. I've heard that. Now I would love to take credit and say I meant to do that. I didn't, honestly. I would love to be able to come up with some kind of plan to identify somebody who's suicidal, who's really suicidal, and figure out how to pull them up out of that. But that's tricky. Whenever it's to the point where you're wanting to leave the whole damn matrix because you're just sick of this existence, I still don't really know exactly how to connect and save somebody from making that decision. You know, it's a tough one.
Well, I think the first thing is going back to the 7 of Cups is to realize that the falseness is trying to say that you know the answer to that, or you tell people this is the only right. Like like you can't save somebody fully from what action they're going to do, because, like you said, you've helped and assist people with information and knowledge, right? They still had to make the choice not to do it themselves, and it's always on ourselves. But the illusion of the 7 of Cups that comes before the 8 of Cups, which you usually have to walk away from, is the illusion like, I'm going to watch this and this is going to change me forever. If I we'll use it, I'm going to become vegan. So I watched a vegan documentary. So that could be a very 7 of Cups thing. But then as you're sitting there malnourished and you're about to die, like that TikTok influencer who just died because they couldn't let go of being vegan. Not saying that vegan's bad. If it works for you, it's in a frequency alignment, it works. But for that woman, it obviously did not work. She looked like 55 pounds when she passed away. But she couldn't let go of the vision of, I have to create that. So that's where emotions can seem like beliefs when they're not, right? Like we can condition ourselves into a feeling of satisfaction or comfort that's in the worst toxic situations or the worst illusions of our life. And that's the deepest hole that we can get to. To walk out of those is a difficult thing, but to walk out is not as difficult than to sit in, you know?
Yeah, the spiritual community, we talk about this a lot, has been so infiltrated. And I've heard many different, I'm gonna say conspiracy theory because I'm not 100% sure, but I've heard many different conspiracy theories about how that was one of the most successful infiltrations into the spiritual community. It was the whole vegan thing, because there's many people in the spiritual community, including Billy Carson. He's one that I'll name, who has been there and avidly preaches against it. It's like, no, the whole vegan, vegetarian thing, that was an infiltration from the dark side. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, especially since I've been in media since I was 19, and watching production and so forth, and watching the change from television over to things like streaming services, and watching how they actually use that supersize me first to make it look like everything is toxic in the food that's out there in the world, which I get. There's toxicities there, right? But we also have to remember, like, as human beings, like, come on, like, do we even know who we are yet? Do we even know what's really good for us? I mean, everything from the earth that's made, including McDonald's, is made from the earth, even if it's a poison, right? That's the best understanding of alchemy, is that you can use any different molecular structure or chemical or natural product, and it can be good for you or it could be bad for you. But it was interesting watching Supersize Me being this video of like, I ate the same restaurant for 30 days. Now, what people didn't see was it was the same restaurant. He only did it for McDonald's. Now, I can tell you, if I eat the same meal every day, I'd probably feel malnourished and sick and not good, right? It's in the moment of whatever I feel like eating. That's a natural way to be. Whereas like it was the whole concept of like, if you think of veganism or any kind of dietary system, like now there's of course like Jordan Peterson's daughter being like on the only meat diet only, right? So there's the extremes on both sides, but what happens is it becomes this like people aren't seeing that supersize me wasn't about McDonald's as much as it was about staying on the same path and what it will lead on and not being able to let go and move to other different things, right? So the idea of it was, oh, I need to be able to move on from eating this way to only go to this place that's healthy. But the irony in that is like, no, it was about trying to show you without showing you. And then what came after that? All the vegan documentaries, Netflix pumped them at the early part of Netflix being a streaming service. That's what they pumped. And it was all during the time when Obama was president. And what was Michelle Obama's thing? Making the world healthy, right? And the idea of like every kid needs to eat healthy because we do have an epidemic in America where 70% of Americans are overweight. So I understand it, but they throw it in as like they have found the solution, the same way that they said, oh yeah, take this fucking experiment and fucking everybody will be fine. Now the repercussions of that are fucking horrendous. And now it's like, let's not talk about it the same way. Let's not talk about the shit going on with obesity. It's turning into that same thing. What's the third thing? Look at this Maui situation, the disaster, and trying to throw it on climate change instead of like, well, what's really going on? Why are all these celebrities buying all the land around there? Why are the native tribes that have lived on Hawaii forever holding that spot and chose not to sell that land to the corporations? And then why is there there was a digital meeting in March about turning the whole island of Maui into an electric smart grid, all electric car thing. And then there's another meeting in September, which I guarantee you they'll still do. So it's like, it's like one of those things to where now it's just like the disasters get thrown into, that's climate change. You know what? That person wasn't vegan. That's why they died. That person didn't take the experiment. That's why they died. Or the inverse is happening on the other side too. Oh, they took it, so that's why they died. Or they didn't, it's becoming to where they have got a grip on programming both sides without for a sec pulling away and then coming from your own self, looking at all the information and not being emotionally attached to all of it to be able to really, truly look at every aspect that you can. And it's not blanket in every situation. There's no such thing as a blanket, right? Like everything is this. It's all bad and it's all good. That's what alchemy teaches, is the understanding we go in the pendulum of life from chaos to order. And so what happens is people in their relationships or their toxic situations or whatever that's not themselves, it becomes chaotic. What do? Well, I don't want to emotionally leave the chaos. I'm going to try and bring order to it now. Okay, but now I'm going to go authoritarian. Now I'm going to become controlling. Now I'm going to become desperate too, because control has desperation with it, right? Where chaos has kind of like a manic element to it and fuck it. I don't know what the fuck's going to happen next, but shit, this is a little crazy. I can't find my true spiritual nature and my divine art that I could be creating in my life because you're using your energy in dealing with the chaos, or you're dealing with your energy and dealing with the control and the order. And so we're in a world right now where they're throwing the chaos and the order, and then people aren't finding the art they can bring to this, or they're being denied it. Like on Maui right now, you can't bring food or water or anything in. FEMA's approving what's coming in. So all these people need help. There's thousands of people missing. They're even telling you already that there's going to be thousands dead, right? So it's like, but you can't go in there and help anybody? Only FEMA's allowed to? The control's there when they created a chaotic order. It's happening in the same thing happened with this whole idea of what they call a pandemic. That was no pandemic. That was create a chaos, which comes from everything from the pole shifts to fucking weird labs to all the things all in one and all the other secrets we don't know, and then throw this control element in there. So everything right now is, when are we all as a collective going to walk away from in that and find what alchemy teaches, art, which is our divine art? What can we create? What can we really be? What is the essence of our soul and create? And then nature, but it's not nature. It's the understanding of our human nature, and get back to that, because human nature isn't. The Nine of Cups is okay if it goes chaotic, and okay if it goes to order, because it's not going to fall for the spell of getting trapped into that kind of idealism of the Seven of Cups of like, ooh, the shiny thing that they're throwing that's chaos or order that I have to get stuck into.
Yeah, I still feel honestly like next year is gonna. I could be wrong on this, but I had this real strong feeling that next year, after everything we've been through for the last 3 years, they're gonna try to pull some bullshit again, and the population's not gonna fall for it. I think that I don't know. I could be wrong. I know that I'm pretty sure the last time we talked about it, if I remember correctly, you didn't really agree with me on that, but like. I so see that it's possible that after all this shit we went through, then next year they're really going to try to pull something fucking insane, and the population could rise up and say, "Nah, we're not doing that again," and fucking take this shit back. How do you feel about that?
No, I agree with you on that.
possible?
Yeah, especially the election when Pluto comes for its last time to finally fully ingress into Aquarius, which is 2 weeks after the election. If you just see the way that they're setting things up right now, right? They're setting up all the court cases in such a way to where it's like, okay, Trump can do the election. Trump can be part of the election. And what's interesting is the night Trump won in 2016 was when Mars crossed from 29 Capricorn to 0 Aquarius. So Pluto, that's going to cross for that last time there, right? What if he wins the election, but then he gets charged, but he's not the president yet. He's the president-elect, so they throw him in jail, so he can't become the president at the moment, but he can do it from jail. And then there's all these weird things could happen. Or RFK could win, but then they assassinate him. There's something that's going to happen that you are right, that's big, but it's going to be based around the election, because everything has been based around that election. Coronavirus was based off the election. Everything's been based off the election. Just this weekend, after the Maui thing, all the liberal media started pushing against Biden. And then it's perfectly set, right? Oh, Biden didn't say shit about Maui. He just sat there and fucking on his beach, fucking on the East Coast with fucking his wife, and didn't say a thing, and no comment. I have nothing to say about what's happening in Maui. It's all set up. So you're right. I agree with you. And Aquarius, Pluto, that's coming back in January 20th, and then coming back in at the end of November. We are being set up for the most craziest shit that will get us to where we will see if people are going to do this. I mean, to be honest with you, a lot of people are going to be terrified of it. Also financially wise, in the financial system and digital currencies and so forth. That's where they're moving everything, the ladder, to do it all at once, have control, with also throwing the chaos to make you feel like, hey, you know what? I got to take that order that they're offering me, right? Which is the same thing as the Seven of Cups.
Wasn't it made? I thought I heard somebody say that it was finally officially announced that the United States corporation is bankrupt and has been bankrupt and already went into receivership. So even though this already happened, if it's already been made official, are they still going to elect a president to a bankrupt corporation? Are they still going to even do that?
Well, that could be part of the awakening experience, right? Watching them try to do that again, falsify it, and then having the information that's already out there they can go look up about the United States Corp being created, right, in the late 1800s. I think it was 1871. And what's happened since then, and seeing why did Trump go see the Queen, and why did he walk in front of the Queen? He's not allowed to do that, but he was, right, in 2018 and 2019, and then Brexit happened, right? So there's, and this was the stuff I was reporting on a long time ago, and really putting all those pieces together for people. But I think it's watching that there's a show going on. I mean, to be honest with you, the technology of AI, deep fake now, let alone with already the CIA admitting that they use masks, right, to hide their most, prestigious CIA agents. that are perfect, right? Like that's been going on for a long time. So are we even watching what we think is Biden or even Trump or any of them? You know, like are they, and what side of the story is real? When you start messing with all the alien shit that's out, right? It's like, you know, how much of it's been alien the whole time? How much, you know, it really starts to go down a really gnarly rabbit hole. That's I think the great awakening experience is slowly walking away constantly. So when it hits, your frequency isn't going to smash, because what happens if too much energy affects you? And that's kind of what they're wanting. They're wanting people to deny. So when they do bring it out, it's going to fry people's brains, the idea of it, or make them not be able to even do anything about it, right? Because it's too much of an overload. It's like they're already creating PTSD, collective PTSD, by creating so many events that they already gave them PTSD for, but really them realizing that they were underbelly and undercut by falsities, to when the real shit comes out that's overwhelming in every area that was something that was a lie, that was a fear that was unrational to have. That creates a consciousness to where the frequency can adapt and change. And that's why it's so important on this show and so many others out there in our community that are putting out, hey, listen, start moving your frequency in the right position. Start using telepathy. Start using these gifts that we've always had. So when this stuff happens, you'll be able to not be so fucking flipped out and do something about it. They're counting on a bunch of the population to be literally like robots and just fucking fry out.
I mean, all the people that got the shot, they might be. You know, I mean, if they're really going to do what some people are theorizing and flip a switch, and everybody that has that graphene oxide in their blood is going to fucking turn off, you know, I mean, it's possible. I don't know. I kind of honestly, like we were talking about the last episode, timelines. Like I've been focusing really, really hard on taking my own individual timeline, where I'm not going to say nothing happens, but at least I'll be able, like you were saying, that nexus point that it comes to, that singularity point, where, you know, where I want to be able to flow straight through that into the timeline, where it's as I don't know what the word, bypass the most bullshit, you know. And I'm really strongly feeling like that's what's going to happen. I think they're going to try to pull something so fucking crazy that it's going to be stupid. I mean, if as if COVID wasn't stupid enough, but it's going to be even worse. I think they're going to pull something like straight up retarded, like fucking retarded, to the point to where even the most spiritually dead asleep person on the planet is going to be like, hell no, fuck that. That's what I think is going to happen. And they're going to have to be ready and willing. What's up?
No, continue.
What's up? Oh, they're going to have to be ready. They're going to have to be ready and willing to walk away from everything that they thought they knew about being a human on planet Earth. Because like the good forces that are overseeing all this shit, they've been saying this whole time they can't interfere. They can oversee, they can guide you, but they can't interfere. So we have to make the conscious free will decision to walk away from the old matrix. And I think they're allowing just enough bullshit to happen. And yeah, catastrophes are going to happen. People will end up dying. That's just the nature of the beast, you know. But I think they're allowing just enough of this bullshit to happen so that by the time they finally come out and pull something fucking retarded, that the rest of the people will be so fed up with it that they're willing to walk away from the matrix. And that's why I think the majority of the things that have been happening have been allowed to happen per the good side, is because the whole point is to get the collective to walk away from that old matrix. See what I'm saying?
I agree. And I feel that if we think of manifestation and frequency, and if we connect it with your timeline theory, that I'm not even saying is a theory, I'm on total board with you on it. It's interesting to me though, seeing the activity that's happening with the sun, the activity that's happening with even the planets. We just found out this week that Mars is rotating faster out of nowhere. So it's like, okay, there's something going on. So, the big thing that's going on is our solar system and our galaxy and the plane that we are at with the galactic plane, and where we're at as the sun, as the solar system is since 2012, what the Mayans have predicted is at this crazy point. But what they're finding out in the 12,000 year cycles is what's called a micronova of the sun, which means that when you get not just the sun creates electromagnetic energy, or we have an electromagnetic field, and all the planets have electromagnetic fields, but our galaxy has its own pole shifts too. The galaxy itself, the whole Milky Way galaxy, right? So what happens when the galaxy does a pole flip and lets off some of its electromagnetic field and a lot of its static electricity, right? Then it comes in, and then we have we're like in a bubble, a heliosphere, they call it, right? And cosmic rays start coming through, and they start affecting our planet, Mars, the sun, to where what happens every 12,000 years in the carbon data on the planet, in the geology, is that there's an event to where we get a micronova, right? That the sun micronovas and lets all this electricity go. They know all this stuff. It's in all the peer-reviewed papers in cosmic rays, in all the solar activity, even stereo A. They just brought that up just this weekend on how, that thing survived and how it's doing a new trip, and especially with the Venus Cazimi we had this weekend on how it's going to look at the sun from a different way. These are things why are they so obsessed with the sun? Why are they so obsessed with putting out a telescope, James Webb telescope, right? It's because they're watching with infrared. They're wanting to understand, because all the math was incorrect of what they thought the speed of light was, to how the universe was expanding, and this idea to people, the same way the Gregorian calendar is infinite, right? It's like, no, there's something else going on here. And so when you add that to the equation, what would change a timeline? A galactic, intergalactic, interstellar, planetary, solar system, our own star, the frequencies reaching their highest peak and novaing, and to most people that would scare their shit out of them. Oh my God, the sun's gonna nova, the pole shift and all that. That's the thing, why the temples were made by the Mayans, by the Egyptians, and even the original Templar Knights knew this, and the beginning of Freemasonry knew this, that got taken over. Is that the understanding of the temples, the understanding of the spiritual understanding is, where did the Egyptians go? Where did the Mayan cultures go? When these shifts happen, the timeline does shift. We can't see them, though, because everything's happening right here. Terence McKenna said it best in 1988. He said, we're going to get so crazy, just how you were saying, it's going to be so fucking retarded, right? That finally that lets novelty be put back into public talk. Right? Things that would be otherwise thought of as insane. Nope. Let's talk about what's insane, because that actually might be more sane. But it's going to get so crazy to the point to where he even said, you're going to see human cloning. You're going to see extraterrestrial, or whether that is or not. But we're going to start to get to this point. But what happens? Boom. We, as the timeline or the divine universe we're in, has to move to a new universe too that's more in alignment with us. That's the timeline, is the universe, and all those that are frequency with it are going to move into that new timeline because it's a frequency match. We're not a frequency match to this timeline right now. That's okay, because we're holding the frequency match of when the new one is coming. In order to also set and manifest a new universal timeline, you have to hold the frequency of one. Same thing happens in how we use manifestation today for anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense. And well, how do you feel about, we'll move to a newer, higher timeline, and I personally believe that they'll move to a lower timeline. I'm totally on board with everything splitting off, like Dolores Cannon says, splitting off. One will not be aware of the other. That's the way I look at it. I feel like those of us who are holding a higher vibration will move to a higher timeline, and those who are not, they'll go to a lower timeline, because it's to the point right now where those people who are holding a lower frequency, it is so stupid. There's no word for the insanity that is happening in the world today. Everything is just so stupid that like these two timelines can't coexist together very much longer. And I, like I said, I believe that we're going to move on to a higher timeline, and everything is going to completely change anyways. Like, it's not even going to be the same planet. It's not going to be the same anything. Does that make sense? Are you on board with that?
Yes, I'm on board, because, you know, we hear the term the Great Reset, yet we're in the Great Reset of the universe. So it's one of those ironies of where the lower timeline uses what's happening in the higher timeline to trap people. So really, it's not, do people go to a lower timeline, or do they just stay on this earth that we know of in this frequency that's lower and just stay on it? So when the micronova hits, okay, yeah, the power does go out because they want to experience the attachment and not want to move on from the attachment to, well, I'm so used to my shower and my this. Well, then there's other timeline that there's higher aspects, which it might be one of those things to where, I mean, think of the television, your phone, it's all based off frequencies. It's all based off mirrors and literally sending neurons of light, right, to transmute and send energies all over the place, right? So if we really think about it, the experience of shifting a timeline would be like you waking up from in the middle of a dream. Like when you go to bed one night and things just start to change towards that new thing. I think people look at it too much as if it's like this like huge experience of like this catastrophic look that's coming down. That's why the Bible has so many followers, because they're addicted to that. They think Jesus is going to return when he returns every day, right? Or the second coming would be the idea of the sun having its second coming, since we've known the writings of who created the Bible and all of the way that Christianity is, Constantine, of knowing when the sun, who he was a sun worshiper, he didn't worship Jesus till his deathbed, till the day he died. He worshiped the sun, and even all his cathedrals still had soul on it, the sun. But it's like one of those things of like realizing the return of the sun to micronova, to the new timeline.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is what I meant. Like when, like that those go into a lower timeline will just stay here basically, and staying on this planet will continue to drop in frequency. And I don't know, from all the research that I've done, I've heard that even our bodies will change into crystalline bodies. This is what I've heard. Have you heard that?
Well, yeah, I already believe that we are that. Just most people are uncovering it within themselves now, right? Like, I feel like it's more like we already are it, but we're uncovering more of what we are. I don't think that we're discovering anything new. It's more discovering what we already have is the irony of the whole story. That's what we call in this timeline that we're in of time moving forward, is more discoveries of what already is, that is already had. That if we use this card, for example, it's like, why don't I walk away from the false identity of what I thought the program told me I was supposed to be, or my capabilities, or what I'm able to do and what I'm not able to do? Or if I have to follow this religious order, and that's the only thing that I have to follow, or I'm not going to heaven, right? So that idea that if you don't match this frequency of the church, then you don't go to the frequency that the church carries up in heaven. Well, looking at the church and their problems, I don't know if that's a frequency I'd want to be following, nor is it what for the thousands of years through ages, you see it change constantly. And the problem then becomes a lot of people then emotionally, they think they're in a belief system, but what they are is in an emotional mommy syndrome or daddy situation with their safety of wanting to, pay penance to the ideologies of how to be and what to be told to be, which is the most opposite of what this card is. This card is where you realize the power within you, that God and the divine is already within you, and there's more we're discovering that we already had, more than what we haven't discovered is something that we have to go reach for. The same way the Seven of Cups is being thrown in the spiritual community is like, once you reach this and you're this outside thing, it's already within. It's already about discovering more, and that's the awakening experience. We realize the whole time it's not like you and I or anybody else is changed as much as more as what we've discovered within that was already there. It wasn't like it just showed up, you know?
Yeah. And a lot of it too. A lot of the things that I've awakened to on my awakening path, I've realized it's like been there since like I was a little kid. Like a lot of the things that I've been coming to awaken to are things that I knew when I was 3-4 years old. And we're so programmed to believe that that's just your imagination, that the majority of the things that we awaken to are all things that have been right in front of our face the whole time. Is like one of the things that I've been struggling with here for like the last year and a half is memories. And I've heard a lot of people say that the more the frequencies of the planet raise, the more we're going to start remembering our past lives and whatnot. And these memories have been flooding my mind, and I can't even quite make sense of them. It's like a memory of a memory of a memory. I don't know if I'm even putting the right words behind it, but like, it's like something that I remembered when I was a little kid. Like when I was a little kid, I remembered some place that I was going to be returning back to. And as a kid, that was just common sense, that I didn't even think about it. It was just common knowledge. There's some place that I remember that I'm going to be going back to. And then the older that I got, I forgot about it. And especially doing all the drugs and alcohol and partying, completely forgot all about that. Now here for the last like year and a half, those memories have been coming back to me again. So it's like, I remember that, but I don't just remember that. I remember remembering that when I was a little kid. Is this making any sense at all? This is what I've been going through on my awakening experience.
Yeah, you're having an extremely high frequency vibrational spiritual deja vu on a massive scale of timelines of past lives. Because this is work that I've done since Saturn in Scorpio, which would be 2013, actually 2012, or 2011, so Saturn in Libra, is I started going through past life regression work with Pam Teague. I'll throw her name out there. I've sent thousands of clients to her, but she's an amazing past life regressionist and trains for hypnotherapy, and really is the highest end of her field with Dr. Brian Weiss and so forth. But I started using the astrology of Saturn being the timekeeper, being like, why is it when Saturn's in Libra, I'm having my past lives about my relationships? Okay. When it went into Scorpio, my past lives of past wars and death and defeating the dark. When it went into Sag, who my mentors were, who were my teachers, also the religious beliefs that had come into play at certain parts of my past life. When it came into Capricorn, aligning and understanding those missions, it was in its home sign. In Aquarius, where I've always been the outcast, where I've always had to find a different way. But now that we're in Pisces, this is the one place with Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, being here. Saturn and Neptune haven't been together since 1523 in Pisces. So you have the full direct Wi-Fi signal to every timeline and every spiritual full capacity. But what's weird about it is it doesn't have as much when you're in Pisces control. It's the biggest area in the zodiac of sky. It also deals with the highest ultraviolet light. So you're dealing with whether it's Saint Germain or whether you want to go into that, but you know, a lot of it is you're going to these very high end prism based of all the colors of the prism, very Pink Floyd, and beaming to multiple directions. That's another reason why you've seen in the Saturn Aquarius of 2020 through 2023 of the quantum computing systems, this idea of quantum, right? Where when you're dealing with a normal computer, not quantum, its only levers are up, down, left, right. When you're quantum, it can go and gyro in any direction and quantize information in any direction. Now that's great. But in Pisces, it goes beyond that. It goes into the whole ethos, the whole entire understanding of the divine universe and how you fit into it, how others play into it, and more importantly, what's above, what's so below, and what's at every angle, but what's the point of it all into a mass, how it all comes together in a light that has a high frequency. Or there's those right now that are choosing to do the opposite, which I don't want. In Pisces, it's the past lives of where you failed to follow your spiritual mission, or you don't remember, or you don't dream, or you don't understand the cues of a deja vu, or the cues of even speaking to others on the other side, ancestors, and connecting dots and the realized off, like in Libra about relationships only, or in Scorpio about war and past life death and the fears and the darkness. Like it's all of it at the same time at once. It's beautiful. So
yeah. Actually, that you explained it perfectly, because I have a hard time putting words to it. I've been trying to figure out how to explain it, and it's been driving me nuts because it feels just like deja vu and mixed with remembering a dream that I had last night, but it doesn't feel like it was last night. It feels like it was 20 years ago, but it still feels like I'm remembering something that happened last night, all at the same time. And it's fucked up because it's nothing specific. It's not like I remember, being married to this person and living in it. Like it's nothing specific. It's just I'll have these glimpses of being somebody else. And the weird part about it too is I'm not trying to go too deep down this rabbit hole, but the weird part about it is like I'm not even convinced that the memories I'm having were from planet Earth, because whatever memories I'm having, the vibrations were so insanely high. I don't know if the vibrations on planet Earth have ever been that high, but yeah, you nailed it perfectly. That's exactly what I've been going through, and it's been crazy trying to deal with it. I think I'm
well, I think you're
like,
dealing with partly astro projection at the same time too, and being able to tap into other astral realms and actually experience the frequencies there that have nothing even in common, because you're taking the construct of this human brain and idea of it and throwing it in that astral, and you're like being able to see the consciousness of the contrast, right? The only way for us to be aware is to be in this body, to then astral project on top of already what you're going through spiritually, to be able to see the contrast that I believe you 100% that you would be experiencing other astral realms. So not only are you going through past life at the same time, but you're going through astral realms at the same time. And no wonder you've been having some moments of sleep paralysis, because like when you come back, it's like, wait, what the fuck is that? Like I remember when I first astral projected in my dream state, it was like writing it in my notebook was so hard, because I'm like, I was in this world that there's no anything that you think of this world that doesn't even exist. That's how I knew, because it was like dropping on these puddles of this crazy weird gook shit and watching this beautiful planet and falling in this idea of what I thought was space, but it was a completely different place, and starting to go down those rabbit holes. The last thing I want to say to this with Pisces is when we bring up, especially going back to 2024, when all the crazy shit happens, Neptune will still be at the end of Pisces, meaning that people are going to feel very lost. But those that are very aware, Pisces is always, you have to wait till the very end, right? Like you have to wait till the very end of the story to understand it. And we're not going to be at the full end of the story on the spiritual story yet. So instead of it being like, well, then, okay, now we know what it is, there's still going to be something behind that. Even though it might not be crazy shit happening, we still need to be aware and contrasting it. We still got to be aware of seeing, because that's where people become the most highly manipulative, right? So the idea of the last time Neptune came to this place was the Civil War, right? The idea like, no, we're going to try and work together and be a union and be the United States of America. No, at the last minute, Abraham Lincoln becomes president. Fuck you. Confederacy. I want to make the Confederate States of America, Jefferson Davis, all these states. If you're a slave, you're going to stay a slave, and we're going to do this, right? And so there was like a manipulation through the Democrat Party at that time by replacing President Pierce and putting up Buchanan. And the reason they did that was because President Pierce was allowing Bleeding Kansas to happen and allowing new states that were trying to be territories to be formed into states that wanted to be slave free, rushing them with double voting, rushing them and actually killing people and forcing the governors of those territories to be slave territories to turn into slave states. And Pierce did nothing about it. So then they threw in this guy Buchanan, who is gone, which is like a Biden right now. Like, oh, you're used to him. He was with Obama. That was Buchanan. And what happened? He turned the other cheek to the whole situation as well. And what happened is you're seeing the same shit. So it becomes to where the event's going to happen, but there's an event already that's been hidden. Pisces deals with the hidden realm. So you exposing hidden realms that you hadn't seen, not in a negative way, but in a beautiful way. But then there's that other side of this where there's a hidden agenda that we have already known about, but they're going to slide it in already with you knowing. So the same way when you go to those lives, you already know that that's you and you've already been through this or you've already gone through this. It's the same. We already know they're going to slip that shit at the end. They're going to try that. And that's why Neptune at the end deals with especially in Pisces, its home sign, it deals with separation. It deals with consciousness and unconsciousness at their farthest places. But that contrast makes the conscious very aware and the unconscious extremely unaware. And that's what we're seeing. And it's going to get more intense over the next year and a half.
Yeah, dude, I'm glad that you brought that up a minute ago about astral projection, because it happened to me again. I just want to say one more thing about it. Until you mentioned that, I forgot that it happened to me again the other day, where I guess I was astral projecting, and there's this thing that's happened to me like 4 or 5 times in the last year, where my body will wake up too soon before I'm all the way back in, and it's like the most terrifying shit. It doesn't scare me as bad as it used to, because I know what to do now. But I'll wake up in sleep paralysis. And if I try to fight hard enough, I'm like, and I try to break through it. Like, I'm like, sweet, I can move. But it's not my body moving. It's my astral arms. And I can literally look around and flail my arms and legs. And dude, I can even feel my fucking spirit hands. I can go like this and touch my hands. But it's not, my arms are laying right here on my chest. That happened to me again the other day. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. But like, I'm really honestly feeling though, like the majority of us are going through these kinds of things to awaken us to whatever it is that really is going on the other side of the veil. And then whenever they do try to slide that in, whatever they're trying to slide in, I think just enough of the planet will maybe they don't even really have to be all the way awake. Just so sick of the bullshit. And my prediction, I could be totally wrong on this, but my prediction is it's going to be something so overtly retarded that even the little old lady driving around with her mask on right now is going to be like, oh, hell no, fuck that. You know, I could be wrong. Maybe that's wishful thinking,
that's what happened with the end of Neptune and Pisces in 1859 into 60 was some fucking retards decided to secede for the Union to keep people as slaves, right? And keep states as slaves. So everybody woke up, because even the people that were in those places, they kept trying to fall for the spell, but it didn't last long. And it's by things like that have to happen, unfortunately, for things to become awake and to awake a lot of people. So we like I've tried to tell people for a long time, 2020 was the lobby. 2023, halfway through it now, has been the beginning of us walking into the movie theater, and they're finally, the curtains starting to open. So, you know, it's like this is where the only way for it to really become aware is where the grandma that you speak about is going to be like, this is fucking retarded. When you start looking at the craziest part was looking at not only just from the standpoint of it was, you know, a Jefferson Davis who decides to create this Confederacy in Virginia, right, and form the Confederate States of America, but at the same time, our best general decides to move over there, Robert E. Lee, So the American U.S. general decides to join the Confederates. So it looks like we're going to lose. Right. And he has a crazy. So I read to people with the same Neptune position we were in last year, and I related it to what we're seeing with officials today. In his journals, he had this crazy belief for slaves that because he was a Christian and he knew better for the slaves than the slaves knew for themselves, the same way that people thought that in health, I know better than you do that you need to take this shot because I do that's bad. It's the same thing. There's no difference, right? Like I have a belief that I know better than you and you're not able to see it. So I'm going to force this on you, right? The same way that's what General Lee wrote in his diaries as he was going to become a Confederate general who got his ass handed to him, right? So we get so afraid of what these powers are going to do, yet the universe is going to bite their ass so bad, even when it looks like the all-star that we think that we wouldn't want to have us against us on our team, right? That would be against us, fails and is coming from a horrible, negative, dark space in a place that's truly not of a high vibration. So, you know, I think we have to remember that, you know, these are the times in which we're all going to watch what looks scary be really weak. And we have to remember the power within ourselves that are staying in our spiritual selves. And like, as you were, and you astro project, it's hard because that we want to get back to, we feel like there's something wrong in those situations. Like I'm trying to move my arms, but I'm feeling my astral arms moving, you know, or for me, it's like falling. It's like really weird. Like I'm falling through to these crazy dimensions and going up and going down. So for me, it like feels kind of like a soul leaving the body kind of feeling. But what's interesting is instead of freaking out in those moments, I have to keep training my mind to be like, this is what's going to happen eventually. So just don't worry about your 3D body so much. I mean, how else are we going to move timelines, or what's going to be that final push to get those realms to where we go to another place? It's frequency based. It's in our solar system. It's in our galaxy. It's all around us. And just watching out for people who are going to try and force you to do things in a collective hive mind, because the collective hive mind of the South was, we know what's best for the slaves, and they do better with being slaves because they're not going to be able to educate themselves. They're not going to be able to have a better life because we provide them a better life. We provide them shelter. So we're going to start to see the idea of providing shelter. It just got done. Monkey Works just put out a video 2 days ago about how they have all these shipping containers filled with jails that they're building on the East Coast. And so what are they going to start doing? Putting people in 20,000 people onto these barges and then just shoving them out in the ocean. And what's going to happen to them? And what also, it was just predicted just a couple days ago. I just put it up on my Instagram on a story. But, you know, everybody who is an Airbnb person who, and I'm not talking a visitor like you buy a room, but who has a house on, they're already doing it where the government's stepping in Hawaii right now and being like, you have an Airbnb, let's throw some people in there. So instead of it being getting rid of a constitutional right where soldiers can't move into the home, that they're doing it, the Fourth Amendment, they're switching it up and being like, well, these are fellow citizens that we're going to force to live in your home.
Well, can they really force it? Remember what we were talking about a few weeks ago about consent? I'm just wondering if it still kind of has to be consensual in a way, or if they're trying to manipulate to coerce us into consenting, or if they really are going to just straight up try to force it, you know?
I think you're right. The consent is the same way that we consent to our frequencies first. So it's like knowing like, no, I don't consent to that. And you know what's going to happen is they're going to try and make you look bad. You don't care about people. You don't care about all this shit. It's like, well, if you cared and you have all this FEMA money and why aren't you letting all the people bring in the help that they want? Why aren't you providing housing with all the FEMA stuff that you have? But again, I don't know if I'd want to go into a FEMA camp, right? But why aren't you using, why are you spending all this money in Ukraine and giving them cocaine, right? and strippers and letting all the Ukrainian women who are there be high-class whores for the World Economic Forum meetings and paying them.
Yeah, I mean it's narcissistic gaslighting right in front of your face, and they're doing the best they can to try to get people to see it. You know, they're trying to get people to see it and ask these questions. And I mean, I don't know, me personally though, like if they're going to try to make you look bad, like I think the majority of us who have been on the front lines, like speaking the truth and standing up for the truth and whatnot, do any of us give a fuck about them trying to make us look bad? I don't give a fuck.
No. That's the best point I think you could bring up. It's like, why do you think they did the whole mask shaming or, you know, unvaccinated shaming? Because now it'll be the new shame. And the people who fell for that shame don't want to be shamed because they never went through the whole experience of being shamed against and having Joe Biden in the White House saying, this is going to be a Christmas, a winter of death for the unvaccinated, right? As we were all trying to go live our holidays with our families, right? And we went and did, and we didn't all die, and we're all still here, right? So it's like anybody who went with the shame, too afraid of being shamed at work, too afraid of being shamed by the media, to be, right? It's easy now to just anybody who fell for the spell just to be like, well, we're going to shame you now with this. You're not going to let people in your house, like live on your backyard porch. You know what I mean? Like what? When it's like, well, you have to like, take it back and be like, well, I mean, it's not that I'm a bad person, but at the same time, I don't have to invite things. This wasn't naturally invited, right? There's something in life about if somebody came on your door and it was one of your friends or it was your neighbor or something, guaranteed, most people are going to be like, yeah, of course. But when it's forced upon you, and then when they throw the back trick and go, actually, these are 10,000 of the illegal immigrants of the 5.5 million that have come in, we don't have a place to put them that we let in.
So with
that we're putting that problem on you now.
With the whole shit going on in Maui, that is to try to turn that place into a smart city. Is that why they're doing that?
I mean, that's one of the theories, and that's what, ironically, the meetings were in March, and there's a meeting in September about and how they were going to redo it, and then the native Hawaiians who had the best properties right there on the water, they got offered to get bought out to build these new smart cities and all this stuff, and they said no. And they were like, this is our native land. We have to remember that Hawaii is something we bought, right? So like, you know, it came with understanding that the natives there, like if you go to Hawaii and you start walking around and acting like you're fucking the shit, you're going to get your ass beat by fucking people that are fucking from Hawaii, original Hawaiians, right? Like that was their island and America bought it, right? And turned it into a fucking Disneyland. So, you know, now they're encroaching on the areas that they want to keep building Disneyland on. That's a better example. And instead of buying it, right, they're like, no. Well, now they just fucking look like they fucking, if there was a guy who just showed shots of Iraq and Afghanistan, it's the same when you look at the maps of cities in Iraq, cities in Afghanistan, and how our military just wiped out individual buildings and how there was brush and trees standing still. And what's crazy is if you have to remember that the videos of people, right? So they knocked out the power, then they knocked out the cell phones. So people couldn't live stream what was happening. But the videos are starting to come out now that people were smart enough in the water. They had to jump in the ocean and it's fucking black smoke, black flames. And there's hundreds of people in the water and there's no Coast Guard. There's nothing. And they're watching and they're like, what the fuck is that? What the fuck is that? They're looking up and seeing these fucking situations or even like thermite in the trees. Like okay, at the Vegas shooting, which we all know was dealing with Saudis and dealing with all this weird shit, okay, that they try to throw off in shootings in other areas that they never fucking claim in the media, right? They threw all those people off, those Snapchatters that fucking were like, there was guns going off here, there was guns going off here. I was in this hotel that's not even near that hotel. I was in Vegas that literal next day, which was creepy. And nobody was walking the streets. I walked the streets because I was like, fucking, if anybody's going to do anything crazy, they already did it. But that's the weird part is like, there's all these things showing up, and guess what? People just want to go, no, I don't want to fucking deal. I don't want to look, and I'm just going to take the fucking narrative that it was this. And then if you think about it, they might try and use the whole UAP thing, right? The whole alien thing. Be like, that was alien shooting at us, and we have a problem now. Whatever it might be, you know, there's going to be something that's crawling out of this thing because it happened on, ironically, the quote-unquote crazy Lionsgate people. So anybody want to use Lionsgate again? Because are you going to continue to use Lionsgate when the worst atrocity to fucking one of all of our brothers and sisters in the world to a whole city to have this crazy situation happen on Lionsgate? You really think Lionsgate's a real thing when it doesn't even make sense astrologically?
Wait a minute. So what do you mean?
Because on 8/8 it happened. 8/8 was the day that the Maui fire started.
So you're saying Lionsgate's not a real thing?
Correct. Yeah. No, I've said it for so many years. Like, I did all the math. I did all the calculations of what people try to do it. I looked at every horoscope of mine to where I said it. And in 2014 is when I first said it. I said, well, I guess some people are calling this thing's Lionsgate. And I laughed because it was a full moon in Aquarius. And I went, I guess it's so much intense astrology. I guess I'll go with the Lionsgate. And as it got longer, people are using a Gregorian calendar that's fake, that doesn't go along with the universe or the astrology ever. Because based off the way that thing works with leap years, 8/8 is not the same as 8/8 4 years ago, right? There's always a day where we add to the calendar system on February 29th. So people living in an 8/8 idea is completely not connected to anything happening in the universe, only to a calendar system that's already off. So you're trying to match the same day when you're always going to be incorrect. So that's why birthdays in astrology, it might be your birthday, but based off leap years, we always, after a leap year, most people, their birthday's a day before the sun returns back to the position it was when they were born. And so they're celebrating their birthday a day late. They don't even realize it. Or it evens out and it's actually on the birth date. Or it goes to where your birthday's tomorrow, really, at like 4 a.m. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, your solar returns. If you're born on the 15th, it's on the 16th at 5 a.m. And they're like, what? I don't understand. And it's like, that's how bad this new age spiritual community has created these concepts. And are they going to go keep using Lionsgate and knowing about the Lionsgate opened up? What? The Lionsgate of the fucking crazy fucking dark government, fucking false alien fucking weapon bringing beams down on fucking people in Maui and trying to take their land?
Well, I wonder what would be the point of making something like that up? I don't know much about it. I've heard it, 8/8 Lionsgate. For some reason, I was never drawn to it. Like it just never really sparked my interest. And you know, maybe if it really is a bunch of bullshit, that's probably why I was never drawn towards it. But I'm just wondering what would be the point of them making that up? Why would they do that? Or whoever did that?
It was a great sales gimmick in the new age because now it didn't matter. Number one, if you're using anything like a gate and you're using a date, unless you're a numerologist or an astrologer, that's the only people who should be talking about it and then getting to the bottom of what makes a Lionsgate. So they tried to use it with the star Sirius, where it's like the star Sirius is all the way back at 14 fucking Cancer. It's never even reached Leo yet, right? 2, we have to remember that, okay, it's a great way for people to then just conjure up an idea for, come to my Lionsgate class, come to my Lionsgate thing. And then the idea that I only have this one day that it's super special, that's going to be where the heart of the lion, of courage and of love and all this stuff comes, when that's the whole season of Leo. So that would be like if we were to take 2/14, which is Valentine's Day, right, in Aquarius, right? So that's the only special day in Aquarius. And that's the gateway of our love, which ironically is almost the opposite of the exact day. It's close, but not exact. But that's the irony, is it's creating a spiritual spelled holiday that you can only be happy and only access the portal that one day. And ironically, it happened to be when Venus was retrograde in Leo, which hasn't happened. Of course, it happened 8 years ago, but after being in Virgo. But this is the first one in Leo since the same phase started, which was 1772, but really 1812. So You know, it's been since the 1800s we've seen Venus retrograde in Leo, so that's not the same thing as a Lion's Gate if you take it from that standpoint. I can unravel that for a whole show, but
no, that's interesting.
Like,
I didn't know. I was curious.
Well, I was gonna say,
no
8 of
idea
Cups. You better be. People should be walking the fuck away from Lionsgate. That's a toxic fucking relationship. And somebody who doesn't give a fuck about you, and the gate ain't opening up for you because the gate's been open the whole fucking time. You're just sitting out there like, when are you gonna open the gate? Like as if you were in front of Buckingham Palace, which they never do, sitting with those fucking redcoats just sitting there watching you. You really think they're gonna let you in? No.
Well, yeah, that'll be something to walk away from because, like I said, the damn spiritual and the conscious community is getting to the point to where it's almost no different than Christianity. It's really getting to that point where there's so much red tape and so many things you have to do and so many things that you can't do and all this bullshit. So yeah, I'm glad that you called that out. Then we need to start spreading things like that, because if that's a bunch of bullshit and you got all these people, dude, I see that flooding my timeline every fucking 8/8 every year, floods my Facebook, floods my Instagram, and yeah, I'm gonna start looking further into that then and making that known because I had no idea. I just thought there was something out there that, you know, I was like, well, I guess I'm out of the loop on this one because I don't know anything about it and it doesn't really sound that interesting to me. So it's good to know. It's good to know. And I honestly, you're one of the few people that I trust in the spiritual community. So if you say it's some bullshit,
well, thank you.
I believe you.
I was going to say 8/8 in the precession of the equinox based off using sidereal astrology puts the sun in Cancer. So, and it puts Sirius in Gemini, which sits as that northern star in the galactic understanding of from the galactic center all the way up to Gemini. So they're off sidereally, they're off tropically. So in every system, it makes no sense except for a numerology, which is based off planets, which would be a Saturn, 8 and 8, Saturn, which would be the opposite of this glorious sun, happy space. It would be the control system on the control system, which we saw. 8/8 is you conjuring up the demon of Saturn that did that to Maui. Anybody who fell for the 8/8 and kept putting out 8/8, 8/8, 8/8 in all them Lionsgate, you just fell for a Saturn spell. 8/8 using numerology in the most fucking stupidest, shittiest, retarded way that we've ever seen.
Yeah, and isn't 8 like a number of karma in numerology?
Yeah. So honestly, it was a twin flame bullshit idea that came out in the twin flame fucking community of being like infinity is 8 is infinity and all this shit. When you see the irony of like Twitter now becoming the Roman numeral X, people think X as if, oh, it's the letter X. It's the Roman numeral X that John Dee's work and a lot of the old true alchemists and ones of Hermeticism and alchemy understand that, you know, 8 is not the infinite number. This idea of the infinity is the loop of the pattern that you don't want to be in, which is why the 8 walks away. In all the 8s of tarot, you walk away from the loop. People think I got a fucking 8 tattooed on me. I'm fucking infinite and special. It's like, okay, you're just going to stay in that same loop. You're never going anywhere else. You're going to be in Saturn's fucking control.
That's cool. That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah. Yeah. This energy is, I think when it all comes down to it, you know, we're so afraid of the unknown, and like you have to get to a point where the known, like basically what you do know has to be so fucking shitty that there's nothing out there in the unknown that can be worse than sitting where you're at. And it's going to get to that point next year. I mean, you're the predictor. I'm not really a big predictor, but I really have a strong intuitive feeling that next year something is going to happen to the point to where the collective wakes up and says, fuck this shit. That's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to close. Is like, I mean, what's the worst that would happen from walking away from a toxic reality? Oh, you're not going to get the mail when they're not going to be putting the mail out there anymore because there's no more money for it. You're not going to get a social security check anymore. Or what they're trying now is they're trying to get people to get the fucking digital fucking microchip in them by giving them, you know, guaranteed income every month of $2,000. Right. So that's what they're trying to throw out. Literally look it up. It just came out. So as all this stuff's going on, people aren't realizing like, well, it's the opposite. Like whatever the incentive is to keep the fucking false system going, walk away from. That's the infinite trap. That's the 8 trap. That's, I mean, if we really, it's funny. The last 8 card we did was the 8 of Swords. 8-8 Lionsgate would be the 8 of Cups and the 8 of Swords. If you got that in a tarot reading, would you join that date and start reveling in it?
Yeah, that makes sense. No, absolutely not. Now that is cool that they did come back to back like that though, because usually this 8 of Cups comes a long time after that 8 of Swords energy. And if you stay in that 8 of Swords energy too long, and you refuse to step into this energy, that usually is when it turns into a Tower moment, you know?
Right. The irony, too, is the star Regulus, which is the heart of the lion that sits on the ecliptic of our actual, when you look at the ecliptic, where the sun and the moon and the planets go, the star Regulus, why Leo is got the rulership of the sun and the ruler of loyalty and of love and, of course, courage, which really that's what it is that moved because it precesses every 72 years 1 degree. So in 2012, it moved into Virgo. So the idea of Lionsgate now being this like royal, regal kind of gate of my twin flame fantasy, when really it's more Virgo. Like, are you doing the work and helping people this life? Are you being one who's understanding this reality and how to transmute it? Are you the one who's understanding? It's a Mercury-based energy, not a sun-based energy now. So the star Regulus has moved in, the regal royal star has moved into Virgo since 2012. We've been here for fucking, this is 2023, 11 fucking years. It's not an energy. And then if you just use the North Node is in the star Sirius is in Cancer. It's not in Leo. So then they try to say, oh, well, it's between, there's so many, nobody has it right? They'll be like, well, it's between Sirius and then Regulus, some people say, in the midpoint. I'm like, well, that's not exact either. And then I'll start looking at it from every position they try and do is wrong. It's like they're attached to the emotion that they just want that Gregorian calendar date, which ironically enough, it wasn't until Saudi Arabia, of all the countries, I know I brought them up a couple times today, but it's kind of weird, but they didn't even get on the Gregorian calendar until 2015. So, you know, like the idea that the whole world has finally got into the spell of the fucking Gregorian calendar is the biggest, what we're going to leave, because everything's running off that, right? Like everything in the false system, the false matrix, our computers, to everything is running off a calendar system and a time system that's not in alignment with the universe. And so that's the same way as a frequency mismatch, what this card represents of walking away from.
Hell yeah. That is a good way to close. You know, I don't, anybody out there who has been stuck in a frequency mismatch for too terribly long, you know, I mean, I promise you, it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better. I'm telling you, I don't care if you have to walk away from every fucking thing. You know how many times I've had to do that? There's been so many damn times. I wouldn't be where I am today if several different times in my life I didn't have to completely walk away from everything. One time I didn't even have socks on my feet when I walked away. You know, sometimes you got to walk away from what's not fucking serving you in order for the universe to bless you with fucking abundance. And that's just all there is to it.
I mean, yeah, I just saw, you know, whatever, Pete Davidson or whatever his name is, he's got a tattoo of Hillary Clinton on him and the pictures of him and Hillary, and it all coming out that like he's her little servant. I mean, like, would you really, as a guy, here's some incentive, I'll help you become famous and I'll get you with Kim Kardashian for a minute, but you're gonna be my little fucking slave.
Oh,
like,
shit.
No, I don't, you know, like,
I never heard about that.
You know, and by the way, Billy Bob's gonna come in with whoever the hell he finds at random times. Like, you know, like, what the fuck? Get me the fuck out of here. So I think that people need to really just remember the 7 of Cups teaches the 8 of Cups. I think they go hand in hand, just how you actually showed the 9 and the 10 of Cups too at the beginning of this. I think that's, if people can take that understanding fully, because it's what comes after, what that 6 of Cups that's before you're in a good place. You already have everything that's beautiful with you. You're making great memories. It's usually with siblings, friends. You're in a nice courtyard. It's all good, but it's not enough for you. It's not enough how beautiful life is. Oh God, that's where things get on the really quick. Out of alignment. Back to, I got to get back into alignment, you know?
Yeah, that goes back into what I was saying about how that 7 of Cups is getting the experience, because like at that 6 of Cups, like at that point when you're young, it represents being young, inexperienced. You haven't seen that much, and you know, you get bored with it after a while. After a while, it's like, what else is out there? And then the 7 of Cups is when you go out there and you find out what the fuck's out there, and you realize that it don't matter what's out there, it ain't gonna fill that fucking void.
No, it's not. Well, I got to go fill the toilet with my pee. So it was, it was great to be with you. Of course, sorry that we had to do it remote, everyone, and to you, Rich. Sophia's due any second. We are in that magical in-between space and appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week, everyone. Please share it.
Absolutely.
All right, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Attention, please.
Yo. Okay.